Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Broadcast. I'm your host, Jake Braverman, and today I have a very, very exciting guest, former running back of the Virginia Cavaliers and the New York Giants, Tiki Barber. Tiki Barber spent 10 years playing for the New York Giants, and he's the only player in NFL history to rush for 10,000 yards, receive for 5,000, and return for 1,000. Thank you so much for joining me today. How's it going?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with you, Jake.
So, of course, not much of an introduction is needed, but could you please briefly introduce yourself for those listening at home?
Yeah, so I graduated from UVA in 1997. I got drafted by the Giants and spent a decade as a running back for the team. And it was an amazing 10-year career. Went to a Super Bowl, even though we got blown out by the Baltimore Ravens. And then after that, I got right into media. In fact, early in my career, I was in media. But as soon as I retired, I worked for a bunch of different organizations, some in news, some in sports, with NBC at the Today Show and Football Night in America. Prior to that, I was on Fox News, and now I'm the midday host on WFAN's Evan and Tiki show. So sports has been a huge part of my life from when I was a kid, even till now that I'm 51 years old. It's part of my DNA. It's in my blood, and I love it.
So you mentioned being in the media side now after your 10-year career. How difficult was this transition from being an NFL player to becoming a broadcaster and media personality?
I think back, I mean, I've been retired now for almost 20 years. Back when I first left the game, it was a little bit harder just because the opportunities weren't there. Now you see retired athletes all over the media sphere. But early in my career, I was an okay player. I was good, I was bad at times. I was making a career out of it, but I was always interested in what was going to be next. And so I started dabbling, doing shows overnight and working in my off seasons and putting in the grind work to not only learn the craft but meet the right people because so much in the media industry is about having the right relationships. And so I when I retired or when I was ready to retire in 2006, I kind of knew exactly what I wanted to do as opposed to spending a few months or years searching for what was next. It was for me an easy transition. The thing thing I missed, and I think a lot of athletes miss, is that team environment, like that camaraderie that comes from pushing all in one direction and focusing on one goal, being judged immediately Sunday afternoon. I know if I did my job or not, and then you get ready for the next week. And then the non-sports world, it's hard to find those kind of environments. But I got to tell you, being in media is one of those. Every day we're talking about the Knicks or who are in the NBA Finals now, or the Yankees or the Mets, the Giants and the Jets, and so it's always engaging and it's always something different. So I kind of get a similar vein that I had when I was playing, but it's never quite the same.
You think the Knicks are going to be able to get it done or not?
I mean, people are counting them out, and I think whoever comes out of the West is going to be the favorite, whether it's OKC or the San Antonio Spurs. But there's something special about this Knicks team. I think the word that keeps getting tossed around on our show and by even the pundits who were anti-Knicks for a lot of this offseason or regular season and the postseason has this connectivity. They're playing great offensively and even defensively. Their effort seems to have flipped the proverbial switch, which is hard to do, but somehow they've done it. So credit goes to them. I do think they have a chance. The fact that you're just in the finals means that you have a chance. And the way that they've done it in dominant fashion over the last two series, sweeping both the 76ers and then the Cavaliers, and I think more impressively, blowing them out in that closeout game. They play the closeout games like they're down 0-3 as opposed to up 3-0. And I mean, we'll see because that's the beauty of sport is that anything can happen, but they definitely have a chance.
I mean, I think that it could go either way. If they play the Thunder, it's going to be tough, but I think it's going to be
Right.
tough to stop Wemby as well. So I
Yeah, I
guess we'll
mean
see.
Wemby's a unicorn. He's one
Yeah.
of one in this league, and he's big. He can shoot. He had a bad game in game five, so they're down 3-2 right now. But you never know. Whoever the Knicks end up having to face in the NBA Finals is going to be a challenge. OKC is the defending champs. SGA is the MVP, but Wemby is a force. I don't know how you deal with him on any level unless he just has off days.
So talking about New York, you played in one of the biggest sports markets, being New York. How did you deal with the pressure and criticism that came with this?
I think you just have to learn to accept it and not take it personally. I mean, the thing that I found really early in my career is that the New York fan is extraordinarily knowledgeable. Right? They're not throwing opinions at you, whether that's the fans themselves or whether it's the sports talk radio or whether it's the newspapers. They all know what they're getting at, and they can get into the finer details. And so it's hard to push back when they criticize you. And the only way I found to do it was just to make myself better and find a way to silence whatever the criticism was by being better at it. But I think certain people thrive in that environment, thrive being challenged. And over the years, I've seen so many great New York athletes, whether the Derek Jeters of the world or whoever it may have been on any of these other teams. They find ways to take that chip of fan ire and channel it into something that makes them better. I mean, I think we're seeing that with Jalen Brunson with the New York Knicks. To go back to that example, when he came here 4 years ago, nobody thought that he was going to evolve into one of the best players in the league, really one of the most clutch players in the league. But I think he hears everything, not taking it personally, but hears it and lets it thrive him. And so I think the best athletes in this town find ways to take advantage of the negativity and turning it into something positive.
So, I mean, talking about the New York fans, I'm sure you've seen what's going on in the city after they won Game 4. They had to shut down the watch party just because of how crazy they are. I mean, if they win the finals, like, what do you think's gonna happen?
Oh, it's going to be insane. I mean, it's been forever. 1973 was the last time the Knicks won a championship, and most of us weren't alive. Some of the old heads still kind of remember that, but it's been a long time. And even considering all the sports, it's been 15 years since this city has had a championship, and that was the Giants back in 2011. And so I think the built up anticipation is there. It's convoluted in a sense because this is a town of that's a two sport team or two team in every sports here. So there might not be all Knick fans, but I think there are all New York fans, and some people might hate that the Knicks are going to win, but they can't help but root for the Knicks to win.
Right. So, I want to shift this a little bit over towards football again.
Mhm.
In your opinion, what separates a good locker room from a great one?
I think the biggest thing is communication and clarity on and purpose. I think some of the best locker rooms that I was ever in, we knew what our roles were individually, and we also knew what our team goals were. I think sometimes when you don't have a group of guys who are all on the same page, and I feel like not to pick on the Mets, but they're just in a bad spot right now. The Mets are a new clubhouse, right? Jorge Polanco's new, Freddie Peralta's new, Luis Robert Jr. is new. Those two of those guys aren't even playing. A bunch of these young kids have come up. Carson Benz and AJ Ewing. Nick Borbito was here for a second, but then he got sent back down. Nolan McLean. These guys haven't played together. And so when things start to unravel a little bit, it takes a familiarity with your teammate in order to push the right button to lift them back up. And so, to me, the best locker rooms, or if we're talking baseball, clubhouses, are ones that are very familiar with one another and they know how to get someone out of whatever funk they're in and push forward for a team. Part of that starts with the head coach, right? The head coach has to be able to delegate that. It's no different than any leadership position in any kind of industry. If the head coach or the CEO or the president, whoever is in charge of these units, if they know how to push the right buttons and at the same time delegate some of that authority down to those lower levels, I think it's easier to pull yourself out of the bad times because they're going to happen, right? And especially in sports, locker rooms often get frustrated, and it's being able to communicate through frustration and not let it turn into chaos that I think allow the best teams to thrive and to come through adversity and be stronger on the other side of it.
You mentioned the head coach delegating leadership to other players within the locker room. Who's the best leader that you ever played with, and what was the reason for that?
Yeah, there was a couple. Honestly, I got to go back to college with George Welsh, my head coach at UVA. He was very no nonsense. He didn't talk a lot, wasn't very verbose. He wasn't screaming at you necessarily unless things were going bad, but he knew how to push your right buttons. And something as a young kid, I mean, I was 19, 20, 21 years old when I was playing for him. I didn't know what he was doing all the time. And I almost felt like he was picking on me, but what he was trying to do was challenge me and force me to want to be a better player. And it ultimately is what led to me taking the steps that I did and having a pretty good career, a really good career at UVA, and then getting into the league. I think Tom Coughlin with the Giants, he evolved. I think some of the best leaders learn how to evolve to their units. Unfortunately for me, because I retired right before they won a championship, it happened after I left for him. He was a stickler, Tom Coughlin, with the Giants. It was you got to be 5 minutes early for your meetings. You got to, wear your shoes a certain way. You always have to practice. We're going to be in pads in week 15 or 16 of a long season because it's those little things that matter. And he would always emphasize those little things. But in 2007, he started to take a not a softer touch, but a more open touch to hearing what the players needed or wanted. And I never forget Sean O'Hara, who was the center on that championship team in '07. He called me in training camp. It was like, dude, you're not gonna believe what Tom is doing. Like he's a completely different person. He's taking us bowling and he's doing all these different things that we never would have thought we would have done. He also created a leadership council so that some of the veterans and the captains of the team could come to him and express how they felt. Just to get back to the Knicks, I feel like that's what Mike Brown has done with this team. Like there were struggles in that first round series against the Atlanta Hawks, and down 2-1. This is probably inflated and it's lore at this point. But Carl Anthony Towns suggested a different way of playing offense for them, and it resulted in three blowouts and them getting on to the second round and ultimately the conference championship. So I think an adaptability from a head coach or leader is so important because you might feel like your way is the right way, but sometimes you have to see it from a different perspective. And I think when you do that, everything changes.
Talking about Mike Brown, I don't know if you saw, but apparently before the conference finals against the Cavaliers, he had the media team build a video that
Yeah.
showed all the players' reactions to losing to the Pacers last year.
Yeah.
Do you think that like played a part in
Oh,
their
of
success?
course. You know why it plays such a big role? Because you end up remembering what it felt like. And you don't want to feel that emotion again. And if there is an extra, I don't know, 5% or 10% that you can drag out of yourself to prevent that from happening, you'll do it. Like you get reminded during the bad times how good the good times are. And I think the Knicks channeling, last year's defeat to the Indiana Pacers, who ended up doing well in the NBA Finals. If it hadn't been for Tyrese Halliburton tearing his Achilles in Game 7, then who knows? They could have been the champions as well. So I think having a long memory, so remembering those things, but not letting affect you in real time is important. I remember when we went to the Super Bowl in 2000 with the Giants and we lost to the Ravens. The thing I couldn't get out of my mind for the next, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks before I started working out and training again was it took so long to get here, right? From the off season, the draft, the OTAs, the mini camps, and you get into training camp, and then the season starts. And you go through the season in quarters, September, October, November, December. Keep pace every quarter, and you realize how daunting that is, and the luck that comes in that is involved with staying healthy and winning is hard. And so when you get to this final stage, that championship stage, and you fall short, it gets really depressing to think about how long it took to get there. So one thing I credit with the Knicks, because they've been taking the steps every year. Like they're climbing the staircase. And every year they've taken another step, and now they've taken the ultimate one, and now they just got to finish the job.
So you mentioned your journey and how long it took to get to the ultimate goal. But looking back on this journey, what are you most proud of?
I think the thing that I take away from my football career is that every year I got stronger, I got better. I don't think I ever settled. And ultimately, I ended up leaving everything on the field. You knew on Sunday what you were getting from me. I used to tell my teammates that. You know what you're getting on me on Sunday. In fact, David Deal, who was one of my favorite offensive linemen during my time, he'd come find me before every game and he'd give me this big bear hug. He's just a monster of a dude. He's 6'6", 6'6" or so and 280 pounds and would just give me this massive hug and be like, Teak, you can count on me today. And I always felt like that was my mantra is that you can count on me. You know what you're getting from me. And whether I'm hurt, tired, beat up, I'm going to push my way through it. And I think if you watch me play, you're way too young, but if you watch me play, you could feel that as a Giant fan. So I'm very proud of that.
A lot of younger athletes look up to you. So, what is one lesson that you wish you were able to learn earlier in your career?
Um, I wish I would have known that those bad times and that doubt that always crept in my head was not something to be scared of. Yeah, I mean, I can remember some early moments when I had fumbling issues. It would emotionally affect me because I felt like I didn't have the answer and I felt like I needed to solve it myself as opposed to looking for help. And I think any athlete, really any man, could have problems with these boys. It's asking for help, right? Asking to help find the solution as opposed to thinking I'll figure this out myself. It's a stubbornness, but once you learn that there is more than one way and to find success, and that you might need someone else's guidance, it's really empowering because once you learn that for yourself, you can then do it for someone else. And I think it's one of the things I as I started to get a little bit older as a football player, started to employ and telling Brandon Jacobs or Derek Ward or these guys that were going to follow me after I retired, just giving them the little pieces of advice that helped them overcome whatever their challenges may have been.
How important do you feel it is to be able to learn from your failures?
I mean, failure is going to happen, man. Whether it's a test, whether it's a losing a game, whether it's a bad relationship, you have to learn from them in ways that aren't destructive. And I mean, destructive to yourself, but also destructive to the family or to the team around you or the units that sit around you. If it's a business environment, you understand that the failure is not necessary, but it is also inevitable, and how you react to it is more important than the failure itself. You're always going to get another chance. You always are going to have another opportunity. You just have to be more ready for it the second time it comes around.
I know we talked a little bit about it earlier about the community that New York has when it comes to sports, but
Mhm.
what role do you think athletes have in giving back to their communities and inspiring younger generations, especially
Um,
in New York?
yeah, it's such a big I'll use the word opportunity again. It's such a humongous opportunity. I won't say it's a responsibility because some guys don't feel called to it, but when you find something that touches you and is meaningful to you, and in New York, because there's so much access to organizations that do unbelievably great things for other people, it's important to reach out because it fulfills you, and it's a power that you have to influence people's minds and emotions and help either raise money or just do good things for those that are in less fortunate situations. And so I'm glad and I'm lucky that I came to New York because I feel that. I feel that reaching out and touching a community is really the more important legacy that I'll leave. It's always these cliches that people talk about. It's not about what you do; it's how you make people feel. It's something I've always taken to heart, and it's why when people ask me for autographs, I never say no. Or when I have an opportunity to go to a charity event, or as I turn into a runner these days, help with Achilles or Team for Kids for New York Roadrunners. Those things are core to me and important to me, and to know that I can give back simply by being a part of something is fulfilling in ways that are hard to describe if you haven't done it before.
Very, very interesting. I've asked similar questions in the past to for people that I've interviewed. I interviewed Cooper Flax. He's a professional soccer player for
Right.
New York City Football Club, and he had a very similar answer about always just being there for your community and giving back. And that's it's a very good thing to have, especially from people like you and people like him who have a higher platform than others. It's
Yeah,
always nice
you're
to see that people are able to give back like that.
so you're an NYFC guy?
I mean, yeah, my MLS team, I would root for them.
I'm a Red Bull guy. Sorry.
I actually I was gonna talk about that next. I saw you met with Jurgen Klopp, the
Yeah.
former manager of Liverpool.
Yeah, that was, I mean, I don't get starstruck really at all because I've met so many influential people in my life, but I've become a humongous Liverpool fan. And that happened because my brother was a Man United fan. The Glazers, who are on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they also own Man United. And so he kept talking to me about soccer. And this is, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago. I didn't know anything about soccer really. And he said, trust me, Tiki, pick a team and I promise you, you'll get hooked on it. And obviously, we know with the USA and NBC and now CBS also has the Champions League. There are easier ways to watch European soccer, and it's really kind of become a massive spectator sport. I mean, you talk about the Super Bowl that had, I don't know, what, 100 million viewers. A Liverpool Man City game during the Super Bowl, the day of the Super Bowl, had like 350 million viewers. And so it's become this massive sport. So I originally I picked Man City. He said anybody but Man City because they cheat because they have so much money and they have like two starting 11s on that team. So I ended up settling on Liverpool because of Sadio Mane, who used to have this like blonde streak in his hair, and him with Mo Salah was just like the dynamic of those two forwards was, and it was awesome to watch. And right after I started following them, they won the Champions League, and then they won the Premier League, and so I became hooked ever since. And Jurgen Klopp was one of these guys who I loved his energy on the touchline, and I loved how like he motivated and played this unbelievably aggressive brand of soccer, and so I got hooked on him. And then I met the New York Red Bulls. They were advertising on WFAN, and I got a chance to go over to a couple of those games. And Mark Grandpierre, who is the president, told me last year, he's like, "Look, Jurgen Klopp might be around. He's working for Red Bull now." I said, "Dude, if he ever comes to a game, I have to be there." And so earlier this year, beginning of this year, I got a chance to meet him, and I didn't even know what to say. I was like, "Dude, I am such a big fan. You're iconic in the soccer world." And so it was a highlight of my soccer loving life these days.
I'm a Chelsea guy, so this year was not so much fun, but
Yeah, I know, I know. But eventually it'll come around. I mean, it came around for Arsenal. I mean,
yeah,
they've been the bridesmaid year over year over year, and they finally got it done.
I just can't stand Arsenal. So upset that they won the league.
Right.
But anyway, I'm gonna let you go with one final question. I always end all my episodes with this one question.
Okay.
What is your definition of the word success?
This is interesting. So, my mom used to always tell me um, to want two things. One, play proud. But if you never stop trying, then you actually never fail. And so, to me, success is never quitting. And eventually, if you don't quit, you're ultimately going to find your goal, and you're going to find achievement. And even if that's not necessarily a championship ring or all the accolades, the banner on the ceiling, the Hall of Fame, or whatever the metric is, I think never quitting to me is success because we all have a journey that we're on, and some end before you get that championship. But if you never stop, then no one can look at you and say you fell short of what your goals were.
It's always so interesting seeing the different answers, and every time it's a different reply. So
Yeah, that's cool though.
I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Jake. Be well,
Well,
man.
Mr. Barber, I thank you so much for taking the time to join me today and have a conversation. I really appreciate the opportunity to hear about your journey and your different experiences. For those listening to this episode of Beyond the Broadcast at Home, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow and subscribe on both Instagram and YouTube. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.